What if I told you that Hamilton's 5th place in Canada is more revealing than any pole position of this season? Many ignored it, but the data does not lie. What happened in Montreal could be Ferrari's real turning point, and a warning for McLaren, Mercedes, and Red Bull. Lewis Hamilton marked a time of 1:11,526 in the Q3 of the Canada 2025 Grand Prix. That data by itself might seem a simple figure inside the classification grill. But when what is behind that record is crumbled, a much deeper, almost revealing reality is uncovered. We are talking about the best Hamilton result in classification since Ferrari joined at the beginning of this year. And the most striking, he succeeded without any significant improvement in the car, at a time where Ferrari has decided to postpone his key update package. This result should not be seen as a blow of luck. There are technical, mental, and strategic elements that converge to achieve it, and they all talk about an adaptation process that begins to bear fruit. Montreal, a demanding track with sectors that punish the lack of balance and precision, served as a stage for the British to show for the first time a clear rapport with the SF-25. In the first sector it was Ferrari's fastest. In the second, he maintained an almost millimeter consistency between turns. And in the third, where the brakes and traction are most suffered, Hamilton applied a refined driving style that limited wear and maximized traction in the pianos. This progression is especially significant if the performance of his partner, Charles Leclerc, is considered, which until that time had been clearly superior in classification. Leclerc ended 8th, harmed by traffic in his final lap, but even before the incident, his times were behind Hamilton on average in previous classification outputs. This represents an internal dynamics change that Ferrari had not lived so far in 2025. During the first weekends, Hamilton looked like an awkward guest in a house designed for another pilot. I found no rhythm or comfort. His aggressive style, forged in years with Mercedes, did not fit the needs of the SF-25, a capricious, demanding precision, not in brutality. The key to this qualitative leap can be found in two factors that have been confirmed in Montreal. First, a progressive modification in Hamilton's braking style. Stop late to start releasing before, giving ground at the curve entrance to maximize the stability at the exit. A concept that Leclerc has been using with this type of chassis for years, and that Hamilton has finally begun to adopt. Second, a more aggressive reading of thermal degradation in the gums. While other pilots took longer to heat the tires on their laps launched, Hamilton managed to reach the optimal temperature in the second turn, something that did not get before. This new thermal management was one of the key differentiators of its performance in Q3. What is clear is that this 5th place is not an anecdote. It is the first tangible evidence of a learning curve that has begun to bow up. Ferrari at this time does not have the best car, nor has the best operational management. But what it does now is a pilot who, for the first time from Australia, begins to feel protagonist, not passenger, of SF-25. And why does it matter so much that this happened in Canada? Because it is one of the most sensitive circuits to execution errors. A layout where high pianos and blind braking areas penalize any mismatch. And if Hamilton managed to be fast here in such narrow conditions, it is very possible that he is in a position to be even more dangerous on tracks where the car suffers less. The question is no longer whether it can compete. The real question is, how much more can you climb from here? Ferrari not only arrived at the Canada Grand Prix with doubts, arrived with a backpack of accumulated frustrations since the start of the season. The SF-25, a car that was born as a technical promise, has revealed itself as an almost indomitable enigma. And when a historical team such as Ferrari admits internally and publicly that its car has an extremely narrow operating window, the alarm ceases to be technical to become structural. Montreal was, in that sense, a perfect radiography of the evils that hit the Scuderia. The concept of operating window may sound abstract, but its consequences are very specific. It means that for the SF-25 to give up optimally, almost impossible conditions must coincide with predict and control. The exact pressure and temperature of the tires, the level of precise aerodynamic load, the type of asphalt and its roughness, the direction and speed of the wind, and even the weight distribution in the fuel tank. When one of those parameters gets out of the ideal margin, the car loses grip, balance, and efficacy. And that occurs not only in the race but also and especially in classification, where the margin of error is very. The origin of these problems is in a decision that Ferrari took with courage but that, at least until now, has not delivered results: the design of the pull rod front suspension. This more common system in Red Bull allows a more aggressive aerodynamic profile by releasing space in the lower chassis. The idea was to generate more load on the floor of the car, allowing the diffuser to work more effectively. But in practice, this design has introduced new challenges that Maranello engineers have not yet been able to solve. One of the most serious side effects has been the lack of rapid response in changes of direction. The car enters the curve slowly, and when it does, the rear axle tends to react late. This generates erratic behavior where the car responds late at the wheel but overreaches at the exit. To this is added an extremely sensitive chassis to balance adjustments. A small modification is enough in the stabilizer bar or in the angle of falling wheels so that the car completely changes its behavior. In practice, pilots must pilot with constant uncertainty. They never know if the car will react the same in the next curve. In addition, the SF-25 has shown peculiar behavior with the tires. It requires more time to take compounds at its optimal temperature, which is fatal in classification. While McLaren and Mercedes achieve competitive times in the first or second round thrown, Ferrari needs 3 or even 4 laps to reach the ideal point. This not only limits the strategic options, but also increases the risk of traffic, accidents, or errors in key turns. And as if all this were not enough, Ferrari arrived in Canada without the updates that were planned for this event. The team had designed a new aerodynamic package for Montreal, with modifications to the rear wing, the diffuser, and the ground profiles. But they decided to postpone it after the inconsistent results obtained in the simulator. This decision, although conservative, reflects a lack of confidence in the correlation between its development tools and track performance. Thus, instead of moving forward, Ferrari chose to survive in Canada. And that is a word that hurts when talking about the most laureate team of Formula One. But sometimes, survival is the first step towards reconstruction. The Scuderia has talent, has resources, has elite pilots. But it still does not have a car that lives up to its ambitions. Hamilton's 5th position was a flash in the middle of a storm, a result that shines more for contrast to the general landscape. Meanwhile, the internal fight between engineering and intuition is still alive in Maranello. And until they manage to tame this capricious car, each classification will be a Russian roulette. And every victory, an anomaly rather than an expectation. What happened in Canada was not just a good result of Hamilton. It was a real change of narrative within Ferrari. A moment in which the dynamics that had predominated in the first major awards of the year was broken, in which Charles Leclerc, more adapted to SF-25, seemed to be the default number 1 pilot. Lewis's performance in Montreal not only reversed that perception, but sent a powerful message: the hierarchy within the team can change. And when Hamilton begins to feel comfortable in a car, the story has taught us that the rest of the paddock should take note. The most striking was not just the 5th place. It was the way he got it. Each sector, each braking, each traction at exit showed a pilot who had begun to master the internal variables of the car. But even more, it was a Hamilton that conveyed trust. That feeling of absolute control that has defined it in its best seasons. In onboard camera, his hands were calm. There were no violent corrections, there were no constant survival. There was precision. There was domain. And that is exactly what Ferrari needed. This performance also begins to move strategic chips within the Scuderia. A team that historically has had difficulty managing 2 high-caliber talents under the same roof. From the time of Prost and Mansell, passing through Schumacher and Barrichello, to Vettel and Leclerc, Ferrari has tended to build its structure around a single pilot. But 2025 could be different, because Hamilton has not arrived to be Leclerc's mentor or to complete the legacy of others. He has come hungry for Victoria. And now that it begins to translate that ambition into concrete results, it will be impossible to ignore it as the true pillar of team development. Internally, this also means that Ferrari could be tilting its strategic resources to whom maximizing the potential of the SF-25. And that, today, seems to be Hamilton. His experience in managing unstable cars, his sensitivity to interpret the grip return to return, and his ability to build confidence from technical data makes him a valuable tool for Maranello engineers. Lewis Hamilton's classification in Canada was not simply a good result. It was an attention call. A clear sign that, despite the multiple structural and technical errors that have plagued Ferrari at this start of the season, there is life, there is a response capacity, and perhaps for the first time in years, there is an emotional compass capable of guiding the team in the middle of chaos. Because the true meaning of this 5th position does not reside in the position in the table. It resides in what it represents for the Scuderia as a collective. After weeks of frustration, of cars that do not respond, of pilots who question each adjustment in the setup, and of managers who postpone key evolutions due to lack of confidence in their correlation between simulator and track data, this result offers something that Ferrari had lost. Hamilton's performance has been a trigger. a silent catalyst that can accelerate key decisions within the equipment. From the prioritization of certain lines of development in the wind tunnel to the redesign of motor maps to improve the thermal activation of the tires, everything can be reoriented when a pilot shows that the car, in appropriate hands, can still deliver something close to its potential. But this cannot remain in an isolated result. In order for this to be a restart, Ferrari must make brave structural decisions. It is not enough to manage symptoms. It is necessary to redesign the approach from the base, to modify the dynamics of technical feedback, redefine the priorities of the development program, strengthen communication between track and factory, and, above all, assume that the change begins when the failure is stopped justifying and begins to be built on the few elements that do work. Hamilton is now that element. Your experience, your technical intelligence, your real-time adaptation ability represent an asset that Ferrari cannot miss. But this will only have real impact if the team builds around it, if it capitalizes this moment to reactivate an internal confidence chain that has been fractured for too long.